There is hard proof that the Common Core is already opening our children's minds to new ways of thinking. Just look at this actual answer to that question given by a California second grader. 17 plus 25 equals 42. I got the answer by talking in my brain, and I agreed of the answer that my brain got. In fact, that is the same answer I agreed of in my brain talk. Folks, this child has a bright future. He is only in second grade and can already clearly explain what it feels like to think. Now we just need to get him to explain what that feels like to whoever wrote the Common Core questions.
Kid's going to be a reality show producer any day now. The screaming disaster that is Common Core, the GOP making plans for when they win at the midterms, and Hollywood working the faith card to get your cash from pocket to box office. Time to go around the dial. Stop on the host of the nationally syndicated Fear God, Tell the Truth, Make Money show. We fear nothing in welcoming Steve Deace to the fray. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Steve, come on. Let's get some common sense into this whole Common Core thing right now, for crying out loud. Millions of dollars have been spent, untold hours sitting here. It's got to go. Come on, right?
I think it is going to go because I think it's going to be a serious vetting issue in the next Republican presidential primary. I live in the first in the nation caucus state of Iowa. I know a lot of the key activists here. And I think anybody that has flirted with this at all, that doesn't definitively oppose this, has zero chance of winning the Iowa caucuses. And I think really just about any of the other key primary states on the GOP calendar, there is as much organized opposition to Common Core right now on the right as there is to any issue other than Obamacare. And not all the opposition to Common Core is coming from the right. You're getting some from the left as well, because really who's supporting Common Core are the Marxists on the left, and you have the corporatists on the right. So there's a lot of everyday Americans who are both right and left in the middle there who don't want this imposed on them and their children.
Why would anybody for one moment go ahead and support Common Core when it's obvious, as Stephen Colbert pointed out and others have shown us many times in a serious vein, that it doesn't seem to be making our kids any smarter at all?
Well, I think a lot of it is, frankly, well, to borrow an academic term, ignorance. I think a lot of people have really no idea until recently what this really was. I think a lot of state legislators and governors had no idea. Our show airs in Tulsa, Oklahoma every night. So we followed what went on there with the Governor Mary Fallin in Oklahoma, who was the head of the National Governors Association and had been an advocate of this until her state legislature came along and said they were going to make it a crime to actually implement one iota, one syllable of Common Core into the Oklahoma state curriculum, and she eventually signed that bill into law. So I think what happened is, the Marxists came to a lot of these states when they were really down on their luck with the Obama economy coming out of the recession of 08, 09 and 2010, and really bribed them with race to the top money to sign on board with these standards before they even knew what they were. And now, as Jeremiah Wright once famously said, those chickens are coming home to roost.
All right, Steve, let's go ahead and spin to a serious point here. Ferguson, Missouri. The funeral for Michael Brown was held on Monday. Al Sharpton was speaking once again. This time he was calling for peace and quiet, or at least to many, that's maybe what he was calling for. But there's still a number of people who are very, very angry at what has gone on there, from Sharpton, from Jesse Jackson, from others who seem to be trying to make a buck off this, trying to increase their television ratings, and all this while, in many senses, we still don't know what actually happened.
It's amazing. I was listening to some audio the other day of Jesse Jackson and Dr. Ben Carson discussing this. And Jesse Jackson criticized the police officer, Darren Wilson, for playing the role of judge, jury, and executioner for Michael Brown. But the reality is that's exactly what him and Al Sharpton are also doing. They are already assuming they know what happened here. I mean, you can't tell me on one hand the police department are inept, and on the other hand, they're covering up some racial conspiracy. Both of those things cannot be true, but they will not allow the process to play itself out. They jump out in front of these issues because they're a cause celeb. We had how many people, unfortunately, many of them black, killed over the weekend in cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C. They get no fanfare at all. Why? Because their deaths sadly cannot be mined for essentially a racial shakedown. And that's sad. It's pathetic. It's tragic. And I really thank God somebody like Ben Carson has come along and is allowing us to actually talk about this as a sane people again. Well, we can talk about what racism and prejudice really means, but also what the rule of law really means as well, what the breakdown of the black family really means. Armstrong Williams at the Washington Times told me last week that in 1963, 5 out of 20 black families in America were at or below the poverty line. Today, that number is 15 out of 20. That is downright tragic. So obviously, following these race hustlers for a generation hasn't benefited that community at all. I think what would benefit Ferguson and really every other community, regardless of the color of their skin, is to re-embrace the principles of American exceptionalism, which made this the freest, most prosperous nation in the history of creation.
2 minutes to go. Members of the GOP already talking about when they win the Senate. Matter of fact, a new forecast came out that was in the Washington Post, gave the GOP a 63% chance of becoming controlled in the Senate, or I should say being in control in the Senate. They may be getting ahead of themselves a little bit here?
I don't know. I mean, I've got really low regard for the Republican Party establishment. I mean, they're kind of dwarf on politics. If there's a way to screw this thing up, they'll find it. But I don't think they could even screw this thing up. If you look at, you've got the 6-year itch election cycle for Obama. For presidents, that's typically been an average loss of 5 Senate seats since World War II. But you throw in the fact he is upside down on double digits on almost every single issue that people are going to be voting on come November 4th. I don't think even John Boehner and Mitch McConnell can screw this one up, probably just by standing there and allowing the American people to extract some discipline and some justice against Barack Obama. They're going to be the beneficiaries of that.
About 30 seconds or so. The border is a big issue right here. Is this a winner for the GOP?
If they'll run on it, we've got a congressional race in my home state where the Democrat says, hey, we need scamnesty or all these people will become terrorists. But the National Republican Congressional Campaign Committee told the GOP challenger to that individual, hey, don't bring up immigration. It's a divisive issue. The only people it's divisive for are the people on the wrong side of it. It's a winning issue. The American people want the border secure and the rule of law returned.
You really think that the public's going to remember the border by the time we get to the polls? They have a short memory span.
Well, this is why you need a real opposition party that forces them to remember those things. If only we had one of those.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that. All out of time. Steve Deace, absolutely a pleasure. The show is Fear God, Tell the Truth, Make Money, nationally syndicated. We'll look forward to talking to you again, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, next hour coming up right here on MidPoint. The debate is joined about white privilege. Plus, our intelligence expert takes us inside other countries suddenly awakening to the problem with ISIS. Now, after the break, time to stand up for those cops who are not just bullet heads and criminals. Actually, they're out there. Not every cop's a bad cop. It's time to speak up for the good ones. That's Telling It Like It Is and so much more coming up right here on MidPoint.